Welcome to Hub-Bub, the People's Podcast, where we engage our citizens and investors with the activities of the Planning and Code Administration and encourage everyone to contribute to Hagerstown's growth.
Well, welcome to the April edition of the Hub-Bub Podcast. It's nice to have everyone tuning in and listening to our podcast this week. My name is Sean Brown, a co-host of the Hub-Bub Podcast.
And I am Donnie Harcum. How are you today, Sean Brown?
And I'm doing great. At least today it's nice weather out there.
It is. Yeah, had some crazy storms last night, but beautiful weather today and enjoying every bit of it.
Yeah. And especially with what we've got going on with this pandemic, which is affecting everyone. I think it's good timing with the spring days and getting nice. If wherever you live, you can get out and do your walking and that exercise, if that's what you can do, it can really change your mood.
It's truly a breath of fresh air. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so our podcast today is dealing with an interesting topic, what we call rental licensing. And we might add that, with all our topics that we talk about, we encourage you because things vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So we're going to talk about things related to the city of Hagerstown. We're going to be talking about some things in general with other localities, but it's important to always check with your local jurisdiction to find out what specific code requirements are in place. So do your due diligence. But again, rental licensing, and you're going to talk about what that is. It's a topic that's interesting because not everybody is always happy with having this type of program, especially if you're a property owner. And I might add that if you are a tenant, you might want to pay attention as well because you have an interest in what we're going to talk about today, because when it comes to rental licensing, there are requirements that you should be aware of that are in your best interest and knowing what's expected. Now, again, the fact is that, some programs such as this, I know Donnie is aware of this, that some people are not the biggest fans of, right?
That's correct. Yeah, you have to find that balance between what's right and keeping people happy, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. But we got to do what's in the best interest of everybody and keeping everybody safe.
Yeah. That's a good point. We can't do things just for one group of people.
Exactly.
Because then we'd be in more trouble. So, it's important to note that our department, sometimes the motives are questioned. Why we do things sometimes is just to get money. Well, it does cost to administer these programs. But I'd like to share what the vision statement is. And this really kind of lends itself to the motive, what's behind what our department does with everything, but with in particular our rental licensing program. It says the code administration team will provide initiatives and services to enhance public safety, health, and welfare as Hagerstown becomes a premier city where all citizens enjoy the advantages of a prosperous and growing community. So that's our goal.
And I like that. It encompasses our entire vision of what we're trying to accomplish. And, we deal with this day in and day out. And I think we're doing a great job of becoming that premier city. And as you can tell, just, looking around outside, things are growing. We're in a crisis right now, but once this blows over, we're going to go back to how we were, and growing and new businesses popping up and, just trying to keep Hagerstown beautiful. So.
Yes. And to that, I might add that since we've started this podcast, we have received a lot of positive comments from many people and citizens and business people. So we appreciate that, and we're going to continue to try to improve. But to the rental licensing program, this is a very large program for our department. And not everybody maybe really understands what it is. So maybe, Donnie, you could help us out.
Yeah, definitely. So what is rental licensing exactly? Well, generally, they're programs that are adopted to protect the public health and safety of the residents by ensuring that rental units comply with the minimum housing standards as established by your local jurisdiction or state. This is to protect the character and stability of the residential areas, to correct and prevent housing conditions that adversely affect or are likely to adversely affect the life, safety, and general welfare and the health of persons occupying the dwelling. This is to facilitate the enforcement of minimum standards for the maintenance of existing rental residential properties and to preserve the value of the land in the buildings throughout the jurisdiction or state. To put it simply, these programs are here to make sure the citizens have a safe and healthy place to live. And for some clarification, there are several names that are used when we refer to rental licensing. So here in Hagerstown, we call it the rental licensing program, but some jurisdictions refer to it as rental registration, occupancy licensing, business licenses, landlord license, etc. It just depends on the area, but they all mean about the same thing. It's obtaining permission from a government entity to occupy a dwelling not lived in by the property owner. So that just gives you a baseline of what rental licensing program is if you didn't know it even existed.
Yeah. And to your point, as you mentioned, it really depends on the area, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, what it's called. Some people are of the thought that Hagerstown is one of the only cities that has this type of program, but in actuality, when we did research, all 50 states have some type of program within different jurisdictions within their state. And in fact, some of them have statewide mandates to implement this rental licensing program. So it is not uncommon to have some program in place like this because it is so critical. And so like here in Maryland, we're considered a home rule state. There's not that many states within our 50 that are a home rule state. But that means is that we can only create laws with the approval of the state. Virginia is a home rule state as well. So, we have to work within the state laws as well, according to what state laws say. And of the 100 census designated places in Maryland, 90 of them have a rental licensing program. So even within the state of Maryland, it's more popular than we might think. And again, they can vary by name and how they're enforced. Regulations can vary depending on where they are. And in fact, that's what's interesting in the research is that it's not unique to the United States.
Right.
Europe, Asia, other countries.
It's all over.
Yeah. So we're not going to focus on all those programs, but we'll just spend a little bit of time talking about the programs. Some of them we'll talk about just for comparison purposes. How does Hagerstown compare with other jurisdictions along that line? So it's important to really understand how these programs work state by state. In some states, for example, collecting rent without a license is illegal and can result in serious fines. So if you're in a different area, it's important to check your local jurisdiction's laws in that respect. You're going to need either a rental license, a business license, a landlord license, or sometimes even a combination of those things. So, and there's a lot of particulars when it comes to how that is handled. So, if a landlord wants to start the rental registration process, there's that they want to consider. So, anything you can share along that line?
It's interesting. If you've been in one place your entire life, you may not know that these programs existed. And, this whole concept may be foreign to you. So it is interesting to get down into the details of this to see, what does it entail. And here's some common terms that we use in rental registration or rental license. The purpose of the registration is to enable the city to find property owners in case of emergencies or code violations, and to make sure the owner understands his obligations. So if there's a fire in the middle of the night at a rental unit, who do we contact? Here's a family that's displaced. We need to have somebody who we can contact. Owners should provide contact information for the owner or the owner's agent. If the owner lives outside the area, some jurisdictions require to provide contact information for the local property manager. Rental licensing combines rental registration and inspection. So under a licensing program, a rental property is not eligible for registration unless it is in compliance with the key health and safety standards. Landlords are given notice of violations at the same time of inspections, and they're given a reasonable time to correct those violations. And then combining registration with licensing is preferable to a standalone registration process, since it can ensure and effectively enforce that no rental unit goes on the market unless it meets the minimum health and safety standards. So yeah, you can have a program that just registers a property as a rental, but having that inspection go hand in hand with it is very important, like I just said, to make sure it is a safe place to live in.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we know too that implementing this and administering this program really is only as good as the cooperation that we can get from
Exactly.
landlords. And that's sometimes one of the biggest challenges. So, admittedly, we can have a nice program in place and we're constantly striving to improve it, but it can only be as effective as what we get from feedback from those landlords. So they're not going to resolve all the problems, but at the same time, the more we can get involved and registered and licensed and get compliant, the better it is going to be for the community. And there are a lot of useful tools that we use and we're continuing to implement and use to ensure that as many landlords as possible will register into the program. So now the question comes up, well, what if a landlord does not comply with the registration or license program? Are there penalties? Well, generally speaking, each jurisdiction is different. In some places, a landlord could be fined thousands of dollars or could even be charged with a misdemeanor, even leading to jail time. So some jurisdictions really hold the line on these types of things. And another challenge that we run into, and this is good for those out there who are landlords, especially in Hagerstown, we understand that properties are sold or the status with them changes. Sometimes properties are foreclosed on and they go back to the financial institution because they've had to recover those things. So once that happens, then now our department is now out of the loop. We do not know who the current owner is so that we can address things in the proper way. So oftentimes, as it is with the city of Hagerstown, when properties change hands, there's a transfer of a title or a foreclosure, then it's important for the new owner, or maybe even the one who sold it, let us know, hey, I've sold the property, maybe even forward the new ownership information in case the new owner doesn't forward that. But at the very least, the new owner, let them know and get in touch with us so that we can get that key contact information so that we can stay connected. Now here, and you kind of alluded to it a moment ago, here's a key reason why this is in the best interest of you as a landlord to have the current information. Because when an emergency situation comes up, say like you mentioned, fire, families displaced, or maybe there's an abatement. Sometimes we have very tight time frames on abatements. They can be as little as 24 hours for serious things. The last thing we want to do is post a property, abate it, and now we've had to pass that cost on to the owner. We would much rather reach out to you as a landlord to let you know, hey, this is the situation. We're going to work with you to get it done as quickly as possible. But if we don't have this current contact information, then our hands are tied. We still have to move forward to, again, protect the health and safety of the neighborhood. So here in Hagerstown, when it comes to these requirements, we do require owners to notify us of a sale of a rental property. Within the first 30 days, it's free. And then if it's after 30 days, it's $25. And then if it is over 60 days from the sale that we are made aware of the transfer, then the owner must apply for a new license with appropriate license fee. So it kind of starts all over again. So really, cities and counties in general, they can easily work out agreements to ensure that the cities receive the information that they need to address property sale issues. So some good information, and there's other requirements as well, and maybe you could share some of those, Donnie.
Yeah, so it's good to take care of this information because not only for the financial part, but I can't tell you how many times I've sent out a notice and I've gotten a phone call or an email from a prior property owner saying, hey, I don't own this property anymore. Well, not only did I bug this prior property owner, but also it takes time out of our day to issue another notice to someone else. If it's it's a messy yard, for example, neighbors don't want to look at that. It may not be safe for those neighbors in the surrounding area. this just gets prolonged, and we don't want any of that. So let's move on to a certificate of occupancy. So you may have heard that word before. What is that exactly? Is it the same as a rental license? A certificate of occupancy inspections are generally more extensive than the rental licensing inspections that we do. A city can impose a certificate of occupancy requirement for either both change of ownership or tenant turnover as a way of maintaining a level of quality control in the city's housing stock. So certificate of occupancies result from an inspection to determine that a dwelling unit is suitable for human occupancy. And there are 4 generalized circumstances under which a city can impose a certificate of occupancy requirement. The first one is completion of new construction or substantial rehabilitation, conveyance or a change of ownership, tenant turnover, and change in use from commercial to residential, for example. That just goes over, if you ever heard that word, certificate of occupancy, it's a little bit different than our regular rental license inspections.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important to know the difference. Now, of course, we talked earlier also about, the cost to administer these programs, and there is. So it's just about every jurisdiction, if not all of them, really have some type of fee structure to administer these licensed programs, and they do vary widely. It's, for example, let's talk about the city of Brooklyn. They charge a licensing fee of $400 for the initial license or renewal of a license with a change in ownership, and $300 for license renewals without a change of ownership. It's pretty steep.
That is very steep.
Or a fee, I should say, not really a penalty. Minnesota municipalities charge a rental conversion fee, and that's applied when a property is converted from owner occupancy to rental use. And the fee covers the cost of registration, the cost of initial inspection, and implicitly builds in what is assumed to be the disproportionate cost of monitoring and providing services to a rental unit compared to an owner-occupied unit. And their fee is $1,000.
Wow.
So simply put, what they do is they take and they figure what is going to be their total investment and time in this particular unit or structure, and then one lump sum to cover that. So that's a different way of...
One way of doing it, I guess.
Yeah. Now, how does Hagerstown compare to that? Well, the charge, Hagerstown is $75 per rental unit. And if it is a rooming house or dormitory, it is $100 for the license plus $10 for each room. So we can see in that respect, Hagerstown mid on a lower scale when it comes to our fees. And I think that's good. That's good news for those who live in the city.
Definitely, yeah, I would say so. Compared to some of these other numbers I see, we are definitely on the lower end of things. You're getting a deal, basically.
Yeah.
All right, so if a local jurisdiction conducts an initial inspection, are there any follow-up inspections? Periodic re-inspections of properties should be required as part of a rental licensing process. This can be done on a single schedule. Depending on the number of code and nuisance violations on the property, the city may require re-inspection as little as every 3 years or as often as every 6 months. Owners of problem properties can also be required to take a remedial course or mitigation plans with the city as a condition of the license renewal. An example is in Raleigh, North Carolina. They adopted a probationary rental occupancy permit ordinance. Landlords who have violated rental property ordinances and failed to bring the property into timely compliance, or who have a pattern of repeat citations, must obtain a 2-year probationary rental occupancy permit, or PROP is what they call it. They should get that from the city. A landlord placed in the PROP program must pay $500 per year for the 2-year permit to cover the cost of administering the program, and must attend a city-approved residential property management course during the first year of the permit. Furthermore, the property for which the permit was issued must remain in compliance with city codes throughout the 2-year permit period. That's very interesting to see. So, if you're not taking care of your property, if you're constantly getting violations, there is definitely a fee to pay for that outside of your normal citations. Mm-hmm. So, definitely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fact is that these types of violations are going to arise from time to time. Um, I think the majority do comply, but we're here to address those issues that come out of compliance. And so there are steps that we have to take. Every jurisdiction is different in how they abate code violations, that is, if the property owner doesn't correct them. And so those are built in as well. That's what jurisdictions will usually do. We talk about abatements from time to time. So oftentimes, cities will have that authority built into their law, saying if it's not corrected, we can step in and do that. And that's the truth with Hagerstown as well. In other words, if a property owner fails to correct a violation, we can issue a notice. If it's not corrected, then we can abate the violation. And abate meaning that we can correct it. Exactly. And so when it comes to things like demolishing structures, cutting high grass and weeds, restoring a building, or even making repairs if it's an emergency situation, we have the authority to be able to correct that if the owner does not. So that's very, very important. There's a nice example in the city of Ridgefield, New Jersey, and they even enacted an ordinance where they require their landlords to post security deposits with the municipality. And that's with 4 or more units. And what they have to do is they basically submit the security deposit. The municipality keeps it on hand so that if they were to come across a situation that's an emergency situation, the owners received adequate notice, they failed to commence within 24 hours, they failed to complete it within 72 hours, then the city can go in and they use those funds right now, as opposed to using city funds. Okay. They have those funds on hand from the owner to correct that. And so cost recovery for nuisance abatement is usually defined by state law. And really, ideally, a state law should provide for the following things, such as can the city place a lien on the property and then go ahead of other liens and can be foreclosed by the municipality independently of whether or not the property is tax delinquent. And the city can also get a judgment against the owner and place a lien against another asset of the owner, because what can happen is people will create corporations and LLCs, and it's kind of an umbrella, a protection, but this allows municipalities to still get those and get through that to be able to get compliance. So, and we've just touched the surface.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, but I do like that security deposit. And you and I are very similar in the way we do our inspections. We don't want to fine anybody. We don't want to pass the money from an abatement on to a property owner. We just want it cleaned up. We want it taken care of. We want it to be safe for our community and look great. And that's why having those contact numbers are, very important. Just, like you said, we have a 24-hour notice that we can send out. And I want to be able to reach the property owner to make sure that they are aware, because it's on them at that point. If we cannot reach them, they're going to have to pay for this service and a fine on top of that. And, you and I do not want that. We just want it to look better.
Absolutely. We would rather have, because everything we send out has our contact information.
Exactly.
And we would much rather have a landlord contact us and say, listen, this is going to take me a little longer. Can you work with me? We're more than happy, because like you said, the goal is getting compliance.
Exactly. And, some questions that we get from other jurisdictions, wanting to implement these rental licensing programs, they're worried that it might drive away the good landlords and only keep the bad ones, for example. And, that could be the case, but we don't necessarily see that here. Aggressive regulatory strategies that treat good and bad landlords alike and are seen as punitive may improve conditions in some areas, but may make things worse in others. If they drive landlords out of the market and lead to increased vacancy and abandonment, that's not good. To build a body of reasonable, responsible landlords, a city must go beyond regulations to create a landlord incentive system. Incentives and regulations are interactive strategies. Some of the most effective incentives tie into the regulatory system by offering regulatory relief as a product of responsible behavior. Landlord incentives fall into 3 general categories: single focus programs such as training or crime prevention, multifaceted programs, and incentives to acquire and upgrade properties. If we touch on training programs, some cities offer landlord training programs. The city of Milwaukee offers a free training program to landlords that concentrate on how to be a proactive property manager. This includes code compliance, applicant screening, and how to recognize and deal with drug and other illegal activity. The program is 5 hours long, and at the end, participants receive a free 100-page manual with useful information about the legal and business issues associated with managing rental properties. You know, we like to have proactive property managers in our town, not reactive. We have a lot of very good property managers in town that if they see something out there, they'll jump to it before we even have to issue a notice or call them about it.
Yeah. That's very, very true. And, we all understand the importance of continuous type of training and even incentivizing good landlords. So sometimes landlords may not know exactly how to tackle a problem in their area. That's understandable. So we have programs available even within the city of Hagerstown, like many areas, that can really educate landlords, really incentivize them to want to have a better surroundings with where they live. So when it comes to programs of reducing crime around their properties, we have things along that line that can be helpful. There was a program set up in 1992 that originated in Mesa, Arizona, called the Crime-Free Rental Housing Program. And now it's promoted by the International Crime-Free Association. And so basically what that program was designed to do was take the approach of helping eliminate crime through environmental design. And so there's what's called CPTED strategies. And basically this is, to put it in a nutshell, research that was done where they have different methods of taking land, whether it be, for example, lighting, landscaping. For example, landscaping, if it's not done correctly, can harbor criminals.
That's true.
Where's the best place to hide? If you got a lot of shrubs and they're tall, right? Or if you don't have enough lighting or the right amount of lighting in the right areas. You see? So there's a lot of training and incentives that can go into helping landlords to improve their areas. And then, again, as we mentioned, financial incentives. Really just considering a straightforward way to encourage good behavior is to reward it. Who of us doesn't like that?
You're exactly right.
Yeah. So one way to do that is some cities have reduced or rebated fees to landlords who participate in these good landlord programs. And responding to complaints cost the city money. So it's an incentive for the city as well. Really everybody involved, because if you've got a problem on a property, nobody wants it, but to address it, it's going to take time and resources and money.
Exactly.
So why not put things in place to incentivize and just prevent those things if possible, and really have everybody be content with that. And so this is something that our department is exploring as well right now. We're exploring locally ways that we can reward our local and responsible landlords. So very important information. We hope that appeals to our landlords here.
I agree. All right. So I think that gets us to the end of it, huh?
Yeah,
All
just about. I think it's important to mention, maybe to differentiate, is that right now, today we're talking about the rental inspection program, which is different from the process. So we've got them registered, a family's in there, but before they get in there, we have to do inspections. So there's going to be another episode down the road where we'll talk about that process. That'll be very, very helpful and informative to landlords as well as prospective tenants. If you're a tenant, what is the landlord expected to do? What is the landlord not expected to do? A lot of those things are defined in a lease, but we have to understand also how the code applies when it comes to maintaining property safely. So that'll be a future episode that we can look forward to talking about.
Awesome. I do look forward to that one. So if you'd like additional information on our rental licensing program, you can visit our website at hagerstownmd.org. You can go to Code Administration and Permitting, and then to Rental Licensing. That'll get you all the information you need. And also be sure to subscribe to the Hub-Bub Podcast on all your major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. And of course, if you're just listening to us right now and you want to watch us, we are on YouTube. You can search for the show at PCAD City of Hagerstown, and we'll be one of the first searches you come up with there. And make sure you follow us on social media. We're doing a lot of great things over there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn if you search for PCAD Hagerstown. All right, so our weird news story this month is, the title of it is Homemade Gas Station Found in Las Vegas Backyard. Like, what? What is going on?
Yeah, crazy.
You know, and you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, not so much with this story. So while we're in this pandemic we're in right now, a lot of restaurants are offering curbside pickups or service. Well, in Las Vegas, a gentleman had a homemade gas pump station in his backyard. Police, fire, and code enforcement officials said that the hose appeared long enough for curbside service. So I don't know if he was trying to keep up with the restaurants right now, but he was trying to perform his own curbside service, but with gas. Obviously, this is very illegal and unsafe, but an interesting story nonetheless. You ever done anything like that?
Not even close. I don't think I have that creative of a mind.
Yeah, me neither. It takes some thinking. So, if you missed any of our previous episodes, please go back and listen to them. Our previous bonus episode had Sean here. He had a great interview with Kim Buchanan from the Washington County Community Action Council about the 2020 census. You know, there's some great information in that episode, so be sure to check it out and make sure you take the time to take your 2020 census. You should have been receiving that stuff in the mail over the past couple of weeks. And in a future episode, we're going to be talking about swimming pools. So why swimming pools? You know, what does that have to deal with us? Well, last year on our social media pages, we posted about swimming pool regulations in the city. And it went relatively viral. People were not happy about it. You know, a lot of people had no idea that there were swimming pool regulations in the city, let alone in the county that we're located in as well. And there are a lot of reasons for these codes, but the biggest thing is safety. If you do a quick search of swimming pool accidents, it is alarmingly prevalent how often it happens. So this is something that we really wanted to educate the public on because it will absolutely save lives if you just adhere to you know, the codes that we have in place. Also coming up in May is Bike Safety Month. You can keep an eye out on our social media pages for some great information about that. And to address what's going on in the world right now with the pandemic, in March, our mayor issued a declaration of civil emergency due to the spread of COVID-19 in the state of Maryland, the governor's orders. Resulting from that, the City Hall is currently closed, but our staff is still hard at work. We still have staff that can be reached at 301-790-4163 if you have any questions. We're still accepting applications for site plans, building, trade permits, fences, licenses, right-of-way closures, and any other types that are still being processed, and they will be accepted through mail, fax, or email. Our mailing address is 1 East Franklin Street, Suite 300, Hagerstown, Maryland. Our fax number is 301-791-2650. Planning applications can be emailed to planning@hagerstownmd.org, and code administration applications can be mailed to codecompliance@hagerstownmd.org. And just so you know, I will put all of this information in the description of the podcast if you did not catch that. Our permit inspections will continue as normal with two exceptions. Our staff will not enter the interior of occupied residential structures or facilities for inspections. Currently, we are exploring virtual inspections for emergency mechanical inspections on the interior of an occupied residential structure. Just contact the inspector for that trade if you have any questions. Our rental license inspections will be postponed until 30 days after the Maryland state of emergency has been lifted. Exterior concerns are still being investigated, while interior concerns will be reported to the property owner and management company. Late fees associated with the licensing requirements, permit requirements, and citations will be waived through May 1st, 2020. Our goal is to continue to provide each of our customers with the highest quality of service while we remain closed to the public. That is very important to us. Well, Sean, I think it's some time for some lighter content and some quality music. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so, hate to be cliche, but what's in a name for a band?
Right.
The Plate Scrapers.
Plate Scrapers, I like it.
Yeah. They're bluegrass music. Now, I like all types of music. Is bluegrass at the top? No, but I think these guys kind of slanted my feelings on this because these guys are amazing. They've only been around since 2014 as a local group, but all the members kind of come from diverse backgrounds of music. So these guys really have some beautiful harmonies and great instrumentation. It's like they have been working together for years and playing together. So they're really, really great performers. They've had a number of releases with albums and some really great reviews. So the Plate Scrapers, they've got a website, theplatescrapers.com. You can find them on all social media, Facebook, YouTube. You can find their music on Spotify as well. And check them out. They're really a great group. So we'll take out the show with the Plate Scrapers.
All right.
So again, thanks everybody for listening. We again appreciate all the input. And again, if there's any content that you would like us to talk about or questions you've had, feel free to get in touch with us. Have a great day.
Out behind the corner store about every Friday night, you can find my good old buddy just trying to get right. Couple dollars in his pocket, few tricks up his sleeve. By the morning light, he'll have just what he needs. Change a 5 into a 20. He won't tell you how or when, but he learned that trick from a guy named Chino, serving 7 to 10. And he's learned enough tricks to keep his family fed, but he hasn't had a family since the age of 10, when he ran away and left him for dead. He's a wanted man with a list under his name, crossing borders, but every state's the same. And it ain't by choice or chance, he just likes to have fun. But the kind of fun he likes to have in this world will leave a man on the run.